Well, welcome to TikTok with Laku, where we explore what makes people tick. And in this webcast, I'm delighted to have someone who's distinguished not just in one area, but in many areas, a true polymath. She's an educational psychologist, she's a technologist, she's an executive coach, she's a national speaker, and I've known and admired her for a number of years. So it's my great pleasure to invite Dr. Rita Murray to TikTok with Laku. Welcome, Rita.
Thank you, Laku. It's such a pleasure. It's not only good to be a colleague, but to be a friend of yours. And I really appreciate what you're doing on this show and helping people connect. Thank you.
That's great. So we'll dive in, Rita, because you have such a rich and interesting history to share with our viewers. You're a first-generation American. You're born to immigrant parents. And you're a dual citizen of U.S. and Ireland. And your career path has been very interesting as well. You kind of started with technology, and then you moved into aerospace and cybersecurity, where you had top secret clearance, and then you moved into kind of this educational psychology space where you're working a lot with people and with data related to people. So tell us a little bit about that story of how you've evolved from where you started to where you are now.
It's so fascinating when I look at the state of digital today, and I hearken back to the early 80s when, to me, it was a similar path going on. We were entering a new age, and I had the opportunity to work for a pre-PC company. We had the big platters, and I think what was fascinating about it, Laku, for me, was so much of it at that time was logic and math, the very two things I did not like and was not good at.
Yeah.
And so I just decided I need to challenge myself, because the other half of it, the great part, was a big part of the work that I would be doing was meeting people, traveling, both of which I loved. And so I just kind of pushed myself. It was highly emotional. It was really hard. But what I discovered was, when you have a passion and when you want to do something, people will come to your aid. And so I felt like the right people helped me gain that kind of mindset, which I hadn't really developed younger, a mindset to really enjoy logic, enjoy research, enjoy questioning things. And so it was a real important time for me, that segue from college into a job that required logic. My go-to is relational. I'm highly subjective. I know that about myself now. I didn't know what to call it then, but it was so important to me in understanding. And then continuing to look at work that engaged around the combination of logic and relationship and better understanding it, so that when I left that job, it was right into the PC, like riding the wave of the future, because Entre Computers was one of the first store franchises that actually sold personal computers to businesses. Wasn't necessarily homes at first, but to small businesses. And having already sort of learned a lot about helping people convert their books, let's say manual to technology, I just loved it. But mostly what I loved was helping the people. And then from there, Entre Computers, worldwide travel, large franchise organization, getting to understand the digital revolution that was going on really was fantastic. The company was bought eventually. I decided not to go with the company to Pennsylvania, and that was a big decision. Sure. Because that put me then, as a very young person who had been, now that I know more about flow and have been studying it, Csikszentmihalyi's work for a number of years, I know that I was in the flow, but bordering on workaholic. As a very young person at that time, I loved what I was doing, but I was exhausted. Right. And so I took the break, the severance. I got a great bonus for staying till the doors closed, which was really nice because I knew everyone, the CEO and everyone in the company. It was a very large company. And then I just sort of laid low and rested for a few months. Yes. And I used this as my LinkedIn story. Literally, a man named David Link, who was at CompuServe and knew me, His sister was helping to recruit people into GE Aerospace. And that gave me that entree into GE, where then I got my top secret clearances.
Yes.
Again, the whole idea of people, the nature of loving people. But the interesting thing, and this to me was my defining moment of my career, I had to await clearance. And that meant you do background checks. Well, because my parents were immigrants,
Yes.
my background check process took 1 year.
Wow.
So that means you're paid for the position you were hired to, but you can't
Yes.
do work.
Right.
And so you probably know, because military, aerospace, and defense, you wait, and we called it the tank. And so I literally sat in that tank. And interestingly, I'd been reading the book, Please Understand Me, David Kiersey's book. And it was about personality and temperament. And then I got interested in Myers-Briggs. So I'm reading this, and it's like, for those who know the Linus and Lucy comics, I felt like Lucy, like I had my psychiatric booth up and I just invite other people in the tank to come and sit with me.
Yes.
And so that was where, for me, when you talk about, and what I love about your program is what makes people tick, that was when I realized where I was in the flow, was when I was meeting one-on-one with people. Yes. And then helping them align themselves with their gifts and talents, and the springboard then into working a lot with the company and dealing with top secret people, helping them. Yes. And then moving on to being recruited by the university to come out to Oklahoma, which I decided I'd give it 3 years. And here I am still. And then into my own business with my husband, which we co-founded Energy Services. And eventually this last decade, I sort of look at my life as decades now, as my company, Performance Consulting, with several employees, and working as a coach. So that's a quick run through of the decades. This whole in the zone, in the flow, is what my life's work has been. And I came into it over pain. So I'll be honest about that. I married very young, didn't know myself. Unfortunately, it was a disaster and ended in divorce. And so that time of being alone, yet being acknowledged at work as even a senior leader at a very young age, I just gravitated toward projects, tasks, and all that. But I understood, I began to really read. And this is when flow first came up for me, because I would explain it as I lost track of time. Yes. Everything was great in the universe. I was just always happy, sad, deeply sad about my personal life, but happy in the sense I was learning something new, that had I known this, what might have happened if I knew more about who I was. Right. But then I began to understand that that's about emotional intelligence when you deal with other people. Yes. One thing about learning about myself was my own innate, sort of that Jungian work, which I love, because Csikszentmihalyi says that what got him interested in flow was Jung's work, Carl Jung. Yes. And so I always loved reading about the intricacies of who am I? The unexamined life is not worth living, as Socrates said. And I thought, how could I then use my own personal experiences and my learning? Because I couldn't get enough. I literally ate, breathed, drank, slept, everything about learning. I wanted a cognitive model for how I could understand myself better at the time. I made some bad choices. Why did I do that? Why was I not thinking more? And so that model became really important. And then also congruent with that was understanding that while I have innate preferences, I can also choose my behaviors. And this is where the emotional intelligence model so beautifully came together. And my work at GE Aerospace, those were the very models that were being used at GE Crotonville, which was the leadership academy that I got to attend. You got selected as sort of a young mobile executive into these programs. And I loved it. And so learning more about the application, and Jack Welch's, GE CEO at the time, story, yes, that he needed executive coaching because he was so directive and blunt, and he had some tuning to do. So all of this sort of became a formula in some way, or a framework on which to hang that then could help others. And that was that's really been my heart, Laku, is how do I then take that knowledge and help others and give them a model that works for them. Everyone's different. So really listening, asking the right questions, trying to identify what direction they should go in, and then sort of helping them with their own information about themselves to then apply it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Right. So, and fits perfectly with this idea because I think part of, when people see successful people like you, they think, well, there's a linear path. You just go from from A to success, and so, and my fascination with this idea of flow and to to talk to people like you who are so successful isn't that right? So it's not,
No,
even though the two dimensions of flow, which is you have these you skill up, but
right,
and then you have these challenges that you're going after.
right,
And if if the challenge is too great, then there's frustration. If the challenge is too little compared to the skills you have, then you're bored.
right.
But when you're in the middle there,
Yes,
it matches up perfectly. But it's not necessarily a linear path. There's, there could be challenges in the situation
right.
you're in, and you skill up, and you see that with your life and your career, Rita, right?
Yes.
So, what's one of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how have you kind of skilled up? I mean, you've talked about several of them already.
Mhm.
Is there one in particular that stands out for you?
Yeah, I think the exciting one for me was realizing that at GE Aerospace, which is a huge international
Yes,
company,
yes,
I kept wanting, I had this desire to continue to move up, have more span of control and responsibility, influence more, do more. The
right.
last thing I did during Desert Storm was working at the studio, Sunrise Studios, where I got exposure to e-learning, to video, to audio. I loved all that.
Mm,
I loved being on screen. I love
mhm,
doing that kind of work.
right.
So along comes an opportunity where I'm speaking.
Yes.
We were doing some global positioning systems through
Mhm,
then, by the way, I went through 3 mergers in 5 years. So GE Aerospace,
right.
Martin Marietta purchased the aerospace division. It was a merger. It wasn't a merger, actually, it was an acquisition. And then Lockheed and Martin Marietta merged.
Yes.
So literally, it seemed like overnight things were changing, and
Yes.
we would hear rumors that, oh, they don't want to have too many staff and layoffs and so on. Well, I survived, thankfully, through that time. Well, then came the opportunity. University of Oklahoma was in the audience in
Mhm,
Washington, D.C.,
right.
and someone came up to me and said, oh, the provost of the university would like to meet with you. Now, understand at that point, sort of language, just like at GE Aerospace, I learned a lot about military
Sure.
language
Yes.
and various branches and who
Right.
you talk to, who you don't, where you sit, where you don't. Well,
Right.
then I realized, oh my, the university has this whole set of protocols. And I
Sure.
didn't know what a provost meant. I didn't
Uh-huh.
know
Right.
anything, but I met these wonderful people.
Yes.
And they spoke to me about an opportunity at the
Mhm,
university.
mhm,
And the challenge, so talk about raising the bar, was
mhm,
that the state was about to be upgraded to Windows 95. The
mm,
University of Oklahoma had the contract with the state of Oklahoma to upgrade all the DHS, Department of Human Services.
right. Yes.
Add to it another set of rules and
Right.
protocols I was not
Sure.
aware of, state
Yeah.
agencies,
Of
uh,
course.
under federal
Right.
regulations at some point, but also state, and then in cooperation with a state university.
Yes.
So now you talk about the politics and regulations, but it was like really exciting. I thought,
Right.
well, I've mastered military. I previously mastered the computer space, was
Right.
able to port that over into GE Aerospace. Now I have GE military. And a
Right.
part of it was a consortium with the FAA. So I thought, oh,
Yes.
aviation, that's kind of
Yes.
neat.
Right.
Anyway, that so it was like this wonderful challenge. And I had skills, but not enough where I'd ever been a director before or in an assistant director position. So it was
Yes.
that beautiful sense of the being in the flow
Right.
where it was just enough challenge for me, plus a move. I'm an
Yes.
East Coast girl. I worked very hard, growing up in
From
Boston,
Boston.
very different. And then
Yeah.
having a bit of the Irish in you. And now going to Oklahoma,
Sure.
which was a real stretch.
Yes.
So that for me was a great opportunity. The other thing I loved that was the challenge and the skill part was I only had a bachelor's degree. And the university was very clear during the interview process, like they never hire people with just bachelor's degrees. However, this
Right.
was to convert the state to Windows 95. I knew
Sure.
that like the back of
Right.
my hand. I understood
Right.
computer technology and
Right.
transitioning. And so we then hired, as a group, we hired several hundred students. They were part-time and we were teaching them how to teach people at all the DHS offices.
Right.
That was my first time I got to ride in a plane through OU Aviation.
Wow.
And became interested more in my own walk
Yes.
through becoming a private pilot.
Right.
So that was, to me, a beautiful description of being in the flow and mastering that. But then you can, okay, so I've done that. and so this is where I've even been reading about the autotelic personality, someone who's just always seems to be in the flow. And I've sort of seen slices of myself in that I just want the next. What's next? And Laku, I think it's what you and I share also, the whole idea of, it's relationships, it's the connections, it's helping people broaden their network and realize we want to help each other when there's that right attitude and perception about it. And, I think of so many times, how do we help each other connect the dots? And emotional intelligence for me seems to be that aggregate umbrella under which so much falls, because on my own, I don't need emotional intelligence. But the minute anyone enters my world, I need it. And being aware that the way I approach it is different than the way someone who's more wired. I got to work with this amazing man. He was a 6.5-year POW, Major General in the United States Air Force, John Borling, and he doesn't mind me talking about him. And he is a general. And even after retirement, the general. And I understood that I could not just sort of be myself. Wouldn't that be nice if I could? But rather that my inclination was, how do I adapt myself to others? And so for me, helping people realize they have a tool belt of lots of tools that with just a bit of intentional time spent developing those tools, it's like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. There are opportunities all the time dropped in our laps to get to know people and to listen, Olympic style listening. I mean, active is one thing, but I mean, really listening to what people are offering us, and then tying all those tools together, this tool belt of your natural temperament, as I call it, personality. Myers-Briggs is my go-to tool for that. And then realizing you can choose other behaviors, more emotionally intelligent ones, given any situation. And just stopping long enough to think. Everyone thinks they have to be always answering. Sometimes the pause.
We never let any guest go without talking about the final four.
Okay.
So this is the fun category. So we'll start with the first one. I think I know the answer to it, but I've been surprised before with other people. So I'm going to ask you. So what do you like to do for fun, Rita?
Best fun is flying and golfing.
Okay.
And gardening, I think. And right now, my husband has always had a green thumb. He's sort of that, farm to table person. I'm flowers.
Oh, okay.
I've always loved a flower garden. And so those are and then we fly. We're both pilots. Of course, he's high time Air Force Academy, but I am a low time lover of flying and golf. And, so many metaphors in golf and flight that I use a lot with my clients, and they enjoy that.
So a second question from our final four. What's your favorite book, either the one you're reading now or one that has kind of left its imprint on you?
So 2 books in business. I'm going to stick to business books. My husband laughs at me. When people talk about pleasure reading, I'm not sure I've ever really, pleasure is reading business books, right? Business, I mean people books. And I happen to have one of my favorites here, Humble Inquiry. Edgar Schein is a magnificent author, similar to books like Flow, but Humble Inquiry. And then Marshall Goldsmith's for executives, C-level, especially What Got You Here won't get you there. And so this idea that your competence got you here, undoubtedly, but what gets you further are your behaviors. And this is where that Jack Welch story of how he was told he was way too blunt could he really learn to tune his behaviors? So that's been a real special reading continually for me and for my clients.
Watch TV at all, or do you? Or is there a favorite movie that you like?
I do movies. The ones we tend to run, and we could run through them over. Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah,
It's the high action, high fun, kind of historical fiction. I love that.
Yeah.
Searching for truth and virtue, and I love those.
Oh
I'm sort
yeah,
of a
yeah. I love
philosopher.
Indiana Jones as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
It's a favorite of mine. So
yeah.
that's great. And then my final four question. What is your favorite? Do you have a favorite food or drink or?
My favorite food is whatever my husband cooks. I was blessed to marry a man who owned a
Yeah.
5-star fine dining restaurant, had a great chef who taught him a lot. And I can honestly say I don't have any foodie things I don't like. And he loves to cook. So pretty much anything
Yeah.
he creates.
From your days in Boston, are there dishes, things that you
That's really
crave?
interesting.
Yeah.
I think corned beef and cabbage is my
Okay. All right.
go-to,
Yeah.
and we have it quite a bit. We don't wait till just St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
And as my mother would say, Rita, now sometimes a glass of Guinness would go great with the corned beef and cabbage. It'll warm the cockles of your heart.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I see the background of your office is green as well, Rita. So
Indeed, I stay Irish.
there we
Heart.
go. There we go. Well, this has been such a great pleasure. I appreciate the time you've taken to share this with our viewers. I know people will be thrilled to watch you and hear what you had to say in this. So thank you very much, Rita.
Laku, thank you. That you're doing this is a real contribution. People want to tell their stories, want to be heard. And also, I would love to turn it around someday and interview you, because you've got a great story and you're in the flow in what you do, and you really come alongside and help so many people. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.